He switched on the TV just in time to hear Smith, in her annoyingly creaky Texas voice, tell viewers that his wife, at age 58, the editor-in-chief of Vogue for 17 years, was about to be axed, and that Anna, who had a tempestuous history in the fashion magazine business and wasn't liked by many, would be her successor 4 months before her 39th birthday. Refusing to believe what he was hearing, Marabella's husband immediately telephoned his wife, who had been told nothing about being replaced. She was innocently going about the business of locking up the next issue. Now they both were in shock. In response to his question, "What's going on?" all she could mumble was, "I have no idea. I have no idea." Hello, how are you? Welcome to my channel. My name is Denise. We're still on vacation, so we still have the black background. It's funny how many people weigh in on that. Some people love it, some people hate it. It is what it is for right now. But we need to dive right back into our story because this is the week we finished this book. Now, today we're going to talk more about the situation at Vogue. Of course, I ended last episode by saying that Grace Marabella had some of her own issues. I don't think she was treated right, but I also think that she did act in some ways that seemed counterintuitive when it came to keeping her job. We're going to dive right back in. You guys are caught up. So let's start with this chapter entitled July 4th Massacre. On August 20th, 1985, an American version of a trendy French fashion magazine called Elle appeared on American newsstands. Overnight, it became a publishing success story. For Cy Newhouse, it was the end of the world as he knew it. Well, almost. Vogue, he believed, faced its greatest threat and stiffest competition ever. From that moment on, the message on high to Grace Marabella was to make Vogue more like Elle, which had shrewdly picked up on the MTV generation's short attention span, offering its quickly growing young readership flashy fashion layouts, crisper and spunkier headlines, shorter stories without jumps, and lots of exuberant hot models wearing youthful, sexy fashions. Sister of the legendary 30-year-old Parisian fashion magazine, American Elle was not designed to tell someone how to put style into her life, which Vogue subtly did. Marabella's philosophy was, give them what they never knew they needed. Elle was aimed at fashionistas and wannabes, who already had a thread of style, in everything from the clothes they wore to the food they ate, to how they decorated their living spaces. Newhouse must have been especially concerned when he read May 5th, 1986, issue of Forbes, and noted that in just 8 months, Elle had elbowed its way into the magazine racks alongside Vogue. The editor of print media for one of the world's largest advertising agencies declared Elle a fabulous success story. And Elle's publisher stated that the magazine's readership was younger than Vogue's and less didactic than other women's magazines. Circulation, the business magazine noted, was way up, and better yet, ad rates were less expensive than Vogue's. A quiet panic had set in at the upper echelons. On a cover shoot, Alex Lieberman was said to have called the studio every 20 minutes, demanding to know, "Does it look like an Elle cover? Does it look like an Elle cover?" At one point, he actually called back and ordered that the model's hair be cut shorter, just like an Elle cover. Marabella was told, in charming and not-so-charming terms, to give Vogue the feel of Elle. She couldn't, and she wouldn't, which of course did not go over well with the big guy upstairs, who passed the word that she was out of touch with young people and with women in general. That message was usually funneled to Marabelle by Lieberman, through whom she communicated with Newhouse. An odd setup, and not a great career enhancer. Not talking directly with the head of the whole company because she disliked him intensely and never took him seriously, was Marabella's curious style, and against Lieberman's advice. Many times he told her to get to know him, but she refused. Later, she pondered the possibility that some key two-way information regarding her views about Elle and other issues never made it to the intended party. Alex, she pointed out, controlled the flow of information as it suited his purposes. I mean, you guys, that's a little bit of a victimized statement. Yeah, I guess sometimes Alex didn't say what I actually said because he controlled the flow of information. But that wasn't the setup that Alex wanted. Alex had said, I think you need to get to know Cy since he is your boss. And I think writing him off because you don't like him is probably not a great way for him to get to know you and like you. So to act as though somehow she'd been victimized in this crazy and chaotic world of two ships passing in the night and communication and messages sort of just floating into the void. that needn't have been the situation. Handle it, Grace. Go talk to the guy. If you want him to know exactly how you feel and he has an open door to you and Alex Lieberman's like, go on, go talk to him, and then be like, it just sucks that my messages never got to him. Yeah, it does suck you didn't just go do your own bidding. Her biggest career faux pas was not following Elle's lead, which is what Newhouse wanted. She firmly believed that Vogue was still the magazine some 1.2 million women a month turned to for their fashion fix, and that Elle offered very little. Bad decision, as she would later acknowledge. Through the month of May 1988, top-secret meetings took place in executive suites at Condé Nast with Cy Newhouse, Alex Lieberman, and Bernard Lesser. Planning was underway for Marabella's dismissal and Anna's ascension, the job she could taste practically since the first time she shopped at Biba in the mid-60s. According to Lieberman later, it was Newhouse who wanted Marabella out and Anna in. I didn't push for Anna Wintour, he maintained. She was a demand of size. Whoever made the decision, and most find Lieberman's assertion hard to swallow, since he was Anna's biggest booster, she was elated. Her time had finally come. There were endless meetings with Cy and Alex, at which we talked mostly about dates and timing because Alex was so undecided about the timing, she stated later. Sometimes it was going to be September, and sometimes the following January. The whole thing was unfair to Grace, who had not been told, and unfair to me because I had to come back from the meeting and try to do a magazine that I knew I wasn't going to be at for very long, and lie to all the people. It was awful, really awful. Anna and Marabella had two things in common: their passion for fashion and the fact that they had taken doctors for husbands. Marabella's, Dr. William Cahan, was a cancer surgeon affiliated with the prestigious Memorial Sloan Kettering Hospital in New York. On June 28, 1988, upscale New Yorkers who didn't have to punch a clock were already escaping the city for the long 4th of July weekend, heading for beach houses on Long Island or country places in Connecticut, both especially popular with the fashion, style, and design crowd. Marabella was still at her office, but her husband was at home relaxing after a stressful day in the operating room when the telephone rang. A family friend was urgently calling to tell him to turn on Channel 4. A promo said that the syndicated gossip columnist Liz Smith, who had a segment on Live at 5, was about to dish some major gossip about Grace. He switched on the TV just in time to hear Smith, in her annoyingly creaky Texas voice, tell viewers that his wife, at age 58, the editor-in-chief of Vogue for 17 years, was about to be axed, and that Anna, who had a tempestuous history in the fashion magazine business and wasn't liked by many, would be her successor 4 months before her 39th birthday. The hot publishing story is that this will probably happen on September 1st, Smith stated. Don't ask me why Condé Nast would want to replace Grace Marabella. Vogue is one of the healthiest, heftiest magazines in the Condé Nast chain. You know, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, but they're going to anyway. One of Smith's greatest assets as a highly paid gossip is her ability to have it both ways, to stick in the knife while still appearing sympathetic to the victim. Someone at the top at Condé Nast had dropped a dime, and she ran with it, even though Marabella considered her a friend. With the holiday weekend near and rumor about her demise flying, Marabella should have expected something like this. Newhouse had a tendency to fire top editors before or during a holiday or vacation. He had notches on his belt to prove it. The most recent victim had been House & Garden's Lou Gropp. Now Anna was going to replace another Condé Nast woman just 10 months after she took over HG. What was a constant in all of Cy Newhouse's seemingly erratic behavior, Marabella would later observe, was a kind of extreme insensitivity to the feelings of his editors. There was still another clue that something bad might befall Marabella's career. In early June, instead of attending an important furniture trade show in Chicago, where the editor of HG was expected, Anna was in Paris, front row center at a fashion show, which didn't escape the keen eyes of both the furniture and the fashion people, and the drums started beating. The Tuesday when the story broke, Anna had left the office early in the afternoon, which was curious to her HG team because she had been spending long hours there molding the magazine in her image. But on that particular day, as if she knew that a dirty bomb was about to explode, she had oddly disappeared. Many later wondered whether she knew the leak was coming and didn't want to be around to answer to anyone. The other question was whether she herself had leaked the story, either directly or indirectly. No one would put it past her, and no one ever knew for sure. Refusing to believe what he was hearing, Marabella's husband immediately telephoned his wife, who had been told nothing about being replaced. She was innocently going about the business of locking up the next issue. Now they both were in shock. In response to his question, "What's going on?" all she could mumble was, "I have no idea. I have no idea." It had all the makings of a soap opera, Newsday reported a few days later. The formidable yet fallible editor of the world's most vaunted fashion magazine is ousted. The hauntingly beautiful upstart ascends to the helm, with reports of plots and coups and tales of behind-the-scenes sniping. Marabella headed upstairs to the office of her mentor to find out if there was any truth to the broadcast gossip. "Grace, I'm afraid it's true," Lieberman told her. How could anybody let this happen? How could any boss let this happen? How could you let your editor-in-chief know that she had lost her job to her arch rival on TV, and you didn't even have the decency to say, "Hey, you know what, Grace? I know you aren't dumb. I know that you know we've been looking at Anna, and you need to know that it's serious. And you will be out, but we're trying to figure out the right timing for it." Obviously would have made their job harder, because then she would have wanted to throw her hands up and be like, "Fine, I'm done," and walk out. If she knew that her time was up, what, is she going to wait for them to kick her in the pants? But at least have the common decency to let her know, "Hey, we are letting you go, and here's your severance package." Do you know what I mean? There's enough people who could manage to hold the magazine together while Anna comes, but let the woman leave with some kind of dignity. Even if it means you had to let her go, at least do her the favor of letting her know in your office. Let her know, "We're letting you go." Not just her husband calls after laying out on the couch watching TV, and he finds out on TV his wife is just about to be fired, and then he got to call her and be like, "Hey, do you have a job?" And she's like, "I literally don't know. What are you talking about?" What? How could any boss let that be the scenario for their editor-in-chief? Or even the lowliest employee? How could you let that be the reality for them? I mean, I've said on and on and on as reading this book that I think Cy Newhouse and Alex Lieberman are some of the sorriest bosses I've ever seen. The drama, the politics, the greed, the slicing and dicing, and the constant manipulations and the machinations, and the "let's move this here for no discernible reason, and let's move this there for no discernible reason." I mean, they were people who I just feel didn't know how to do their job as far as it comes to the humans that they were employing. But some of the decisions that they were making are just based off of such phony baloney reasons. "I really think Anna looks good in that short skirt, so let's just let her ascend the ladder." What are you talking about? How is that the way you run a business? When she demanded an explanation, he claimed the axing wasn't his idea and advised her to talk to Newhouse. "I had nothing to do with it," he maintained. He also had nothing to do with telling her the truth. At any point, he could have pulled her aside and be like, "Hey, I need to let you know something. Cy is wanting to let you go. I don't know where that stands, but I don't want you to be waylaid. Okay? So I'm just letting you know." She told him, "You're going to regret this because of how it was handled." Later, Lieberman raised more questions than he answered when he described the succession as a series of misunderstandings and mix-ups, and asserted that the way it came out was unfortunate. Oh. Is that how you would describe it, as unfortunate? Yeah, it was just some mix-ups. Miscommunications. Unfortunate. Mix-ups, I'm sorry. You guys work for a multi-million-dollar company, probably in the billions, and you want to act like you guys are running a popsicle stand? I mean, what are you talking about? It's just some misunderstandings, some miscommunications. It was all just so unfortunate. What are y'all using smoke signals, talking on a tin can? What are you talking about? You have a business that is so high dollar that how could you possibly have this just unfortunate series of events? Oh gosh, gee darn it. We just lost our editor-in-chief. How'd that happen, Cy? I don't know, Alex. It is a series of unfortunate events, isn't it? I mean, what are y'all talking about? Anna was jubilant that late afternoon. Her dream had finally come true. She'd been crowned editor-in-chief of Vogue and the world's fashion Bible, the jewel of the Condé Nast publishing empire. She'd become the 5th editor of the nearly 9 decades old magazine, but she was in hiding. No one knew where. She'd known for more than a month that she had the job, but had covered up and lied to everyone she knew, except for her husband. Marabella, however, was numb and in the spotlight. She couldn't believe that Newhouse had replaced her with an editor who many felt made a fiasco out of House and Garden, where ad pages were down and subscribers had disappeared. Newhouse, on the other hand, put forth that Anna had turned HG into a magazine of wit, excitement, and controversy. And he was seemingly unbothered by the mess she'd left in her wake at British Vogue. So adoring was he of her. If I'd been Grace, I'd have been like, what are my legal options here? I mean, the rage that I would have felt. That girl just ruined British Vogue. Then she came over here, ran house and garden into the ground, and now you're like, let's hand her the biggest jewel that Condé Nast has, Vogue magazine. She just destroyed the last two magazines you gave her, but let's hand her the best we've got. Let's take it out of the hands of this other person who is running a great magazine. Let's just wrest it out of her hands and give it to this child over here who has no idea what she's doing. And yeah, like she can put together some photo shoots and that's, really about it. With that track record, can you imagine being Grace and being like, you're taking my job and giving it to this person who's just destroyed two magazines in the span of 3 years? To Marabella, her dismissal and replacement by Anna was unconscionable and insane. But Anna was the ultimate company girl, and Marabelle wasn't. She'd thumbed her nose at Newhouse for too many years, and now she'd gotten her due, as he saw it. And so had Anna. As one keen but cynical Condé Nast observer notes years later, Anna was so far upsized you-know-what, she could see his fillings. A few hours after her brief meeting with Lieberman, Marabella reached Newhouse by telephone at home. Yes, he confirmed, Heat's actor, and he told her to meet with him in his office the next morning to make arrangements for her departure and a financial settlement. Early Wednesday, June 29th, she found him at his desk, in his stocking feet. It was just 9 a.m., but he'd been working since 5, so he was relaxing. Well, it's been a long time, he said as he dropped the curtain on her career. He asked her to stay on until mid-July to oversee the completion of the October issue, and then sent her off to meet the corporate secretary to work out a severance package. Marabella thought the offer was low, and telephoned her friend the attorney and literary agent Mort Janklow. He came up with an alternative plan that his friend Newhouse accepted immediately. That afternoon, this real-life melodrama continued to play out when Marabella called a meeting of her staff to formally announce that she was leaving. Unfortunately, management has seen fit to have me go earlier, she said. Then she added, Anna Wintour will be the new editor of Vogue. Some who hadn't heard about the TV report were shocked. Others who watched the Liz Smith spectacle had tears in their eyes. Co-fashion creative director Polly Mellon performed her "And now, Mr. DeMille, I'm ready for my close-up" routine. As Marabella later described the scene, grabbing her breast, she threw herself against the cabinet that held our TV and VCR and shouted, "My God, Grace! My God! How could this happen?" Only moments before, though, Mellon, long a champion of Anna, had told a colleague that she supported Marabella's firing, which Marabella was aware of when Mellon gave her Oscar-worthy performance. Later, Marabella said, "I thought of Diana Vreeland's line, 'The stage lost its greatest actress when Polly Mellon joined Vogue.'" Another editor bitchily pointed out to Marabella, "Well, you don't need the money," and mentioned something about the magazine needing new blood. The other fashion creative director, Jade Hobson, immediately let it be known she was resigning. Hobson detested Anna and never forgot how Anna had treated her and others during her tenure as creative director. Another veteran editor, astonished by what had transpired, stood by Marabella's desk and observed sadly, "This is a tough place. Very tough. I had no idea." Well, everyone knew she'd been fired. Newhouse issued a memo to the staff that afternoon announcing that Marabella had retired. Later, Marabella would claim that she had intended to leave the magazine of her own accord later that year or the next, which might have been her rationale to lessen the blow. The next day, the New York Times, in introducing the dramatic change in editors at the world's most powerful fashion magazine, noted that the appointment of Anna comes as Vogue is thought to be losing ground to Elle, and quoted a top national media director as saying, "The scuttlebutt in the fashion industry is that Elle could be the new standard for the fashion industry, and that's got to be disconcerting to Vogue." Newhouse later told the Times that he long felt it was time to reposition Vogue for the 90s. This despite the fact that under Marabella, circulation had tripled. That's what's wild. Circulation's tripled over at Marabella's Vogue, but over at HG, where Anna has just left the helm, they're losing advertisers, they're losing subscribers. They've had to install a 1-800 number for people to call who can just bitch at how angry they are about the fact that HG is no longer the magazine they subscribe to, and they want to cancel their subscription. And yet, they have the audacity to describe Anna's tenure at HG as her creating this fun, trendy, exciting, stimulating magazine. Well, it stimulated people right out of wanting to subscribe to it, and editors can't pull their ads fast enough. Yet we have a person over here, Marabella, who's tripled the subscribers to Vogue, but it's just, not our thing to keep you. We want that little girl with the dark glasses and the Chanel suits. It's so wrong. I mean, I know Marabella, she should have met with Newhouse. She shouldn't have acted snobby and acted like, he didn't have anything that he could tell her. She may not have taken him seriously, but she had to at least pretend to take him seriously. But I just don't think that that's a big enough deal to let her go if she was doing her job well. Anna's takeover raised an important question. Why would Condé Nast, as Liz Smith had asked, fix something that wasn't broken? While Elle was certainly making a name for itself, Vogue was still far ahead of its competitors in advertising revenue. In 1987, Vogue had $79.5 million in ad revenue, while Elle had $39 million, and Harper's Bazaar stood at $32.5 million. However, Elle's paid circulation had catapulted to 851,000 by 1987, while Vogue's had stayed around 1.2 million. Vogue's newsstand sales had slipped, and advertising pages were flat. While speculation about Anna replacing Marabella had been floating around ever since Anna first came to Vogue as creative director, her ascension still shocked the fashion world, particularly in the shabby way it unfolded and how Marabella learned about it. For Miss Marabella, the New York Times noted later, it was an undignified ending to a highly successful career. And Marabella told the Times that the manner of her removal was very unstylish for such a stylish place. She also stated that she never spoke to Anna about the rumors, noting Anna was not anybody I have long conversations with. The firing didn't have as much impact on Marabella, though, as it did on the Vogue editor of yore, Margaret Case. Case was so upset by the shabby way her own dismissal was handled, the 80-year-old fashionista, ill with cancer, depressed, and alone, committed suicide by jumping out of her 14th floor apartment window. In Marabella's case, she'd bounced back in the fashion magazine ballgame big time soon enough. Meanwhile, HG advertisers were left flabbergasted by Anna's abandonment. To have the person responsible for those changes get up and leave after a few months is quite a surprise, declared the director of advertising for a major furniture company. You just don't take a magazine the caliber of House and Garden, change it around, and walk away. At HG, Nancy Novograd, a former book publishing executive editor who had joined the magazine a few months earlier, succeeded Anna. Novograd said she planned to inch the magazine back to interior design, the same place it was when Anna took it over. HG lasted a brief time before Newhouse closed it down, but later reopened it. Shortly after that memorable July 4th weekend massacre, Anna was having lunch at the plush Four Seasons grill room. At another table was Grace Marabella, who had just locked up the October issue and was ready to bid a final adieu to the magazine that had been her home for years. The two editors never exchanged a glance. Vogue was now Anna's baby. As one wag observed at the time, Condé Nast editors may all breathe a sigh of relief because Anna had landed the only job where she may safely be expected to stay. I mean, you guys, I think this is one of the most shocking chapters in the book. I just can't believe that places would function like this. How is this a way to run a business, I ask you? I am startled, flummoxed, flabbergasted. Just a horrible way to treat people. And these are people that have been loyal to you and to the brand for 17 years. Marabella did the job. Well, I guess it just wasn't good enough. All the crimes, like the big crimes, are always based on sex and money. But all the smaller crimes are too. All this business about wanting, it's good for the magazine and we have to do it for the magazine. That was what they said out loud. But it all came down to the sex appeal that Anna seemed to have. This weird ability she had to get into guys' heads and just manipulate them. They're just little puppets, A strange situation. Very weird. Speaking of which, this next chapter is kind of strange. It's entitled Anna and the Boss, and it's about rumors that were going around about her having an affair with Newhouse. And I find it not implausible, considering how she just climbed that ladder. It just doesn't feel like flirting alone would have given her the realms that she began to rule and reign over. You know, like, just so you walk in wearing your short little skirt and you've got this little way about you. Is that really going to get you your dream job? Ousting people who are doing a good job? Like, it does feel like there had to have been something going on. Or the promise of something. Like, Anna maybe used her feminine wiles to say, if I got that job, who knows what could happen, you know? Anna began her reign as editor-in-chief of Vogue even before Grace Marabella had signed off on the final piece of text in the last photo for her curtain-closing October issue. By late July, in her virtually empty HG office on the 5th floor of the Condé Nast building, she'd started pulling her team together and making her power felt by interviewing shaken Vogue staffers every half hour or so. Members of the old regime would do what they had to do for Marabella and then report directly to Anna, who often put them on the hot seat by asking them what they did, why they thought they should continue doing what they did for her, and who they felt should or shouldn't stay. The do you still beat your wife tactic sent a chill through the place. With Anna about to take over, paranoia and fear ran rampant among those employees who saw their worlds crashing down under the new boss woman. Marabella remembered those last days as being a strange and ugly time, with people walking around whispering and looking over their shoulders to see who was listening. She was especially peeved when she saw Cy Newhouse actually walking the corridors of Vogue where he was rarely seen, carrying baskets of jewelry and other things in and out of Anna's office to preview for her first issue. It was, she felt, like a slap in the face to see him so involved. As a side note, let's remember Grace didn't exactly invite him into her world, so I do think it's highly unusual that somebody of his caliber and standing in the Condé Nast industry should be carrying baskets of jewels in and out of Anna's room so she can preview this stuff. You know, let me just help you out any way I can. Like, that is super weird. But also, Grace, you had put up a wall and didn't want him around, so was there any reason why he wasn't seen around your office? Because you hated him and he knew it? Monday, August 1st, 1988, Anna's first full day as the head of Vogue, started horrendously. Liz Smith had another scoop that was profoundly disturbing. The item alleged a romantic link between Anna and Newhouse, a rumor that had begun back when Anna was recruited by Alex Lieberman and Newhouse from the New York Magazine, and one Anna was well aware of. Nevertheless, the spanking new editor-in-chief went ballistic. Not only did it cause problems for Anna and Newhouse, but the bitchy item would put what was described as a severe strain on Anna's relationship with her husband, who is said to have gotten deeply involved behind the scenes in the imbroglio. Isn't it weird how often her husband is sort of mixed up in her business? I think it's super weird that that guy, who's supposed to be super renowned for helping people and children and studying teen suicide, I think it's really weird that somebody who has such a weighty job to do would make sure he had time for his wife's escalating career and helping her manipulate what's going on at her office and giving her the right words and the right sentences and say this and do that. Like, man, isn't there some troubled teen you can help? Anyway, back to the story. People are saying she's having an affair with Newhouse. A catty item of this sort appearing on her debut at Vogue was almost guaranteed and shouldn't have come as any great surprise. It had been open season on Anna ever since she'd taken over British Vogue because so many people in the fashion magazine business and the rag trade had it in for her, either jealous of her success or a victim of her imperiousness or both. But Smith felt the rumor had enough legs to warrant running with it. Was it payback? Despite the fact that Smith had run the item about Marabella's firing, she was known to be close friends with her. Marabella later stated that Smith was furious with Condé Nast for giving someone the green light to leak the story before telling Marabella. Besides suggesting an intimate relationship, the item essentially repeated the old anti-feminist saw that any successful woman who made it to the top probably slept her way there. And while Anna was far from being a feminist, the assertion made her see red. Rather than simply ignore the gossip or laugh it off as the bitchiness of the fashion business, Anna was loaded for bear. Within a week after the item ran, she called a mandatory morning meeting of her editorial staff and everyone else in the organization interested in hearing what she had to say. She was outraged about the Liz Smith item and was not going to let it go unanswered, says a female former Condé Nast executive who had worked closely with Anna. She was very upset that people thought this was still a world in which women couldn't get ahead without sleeping with the boss. I mean, it is a world where you can get ahead without sleeping with the boss, but it's a world where your skills are required, and I don't think that Anna had many of those. The book goes on to say, I thought David was completely behind the speech, the former executive says. There were certainly things Anna said that I didn't think she was capable of. I didn't think that she could be the architect of such a speech. It was strong. It took the issue on where I wouldn't think she would have taken it on. She sounded angry, but appropriately so. It was a difficult thing to do in light of the fact she'd just taken on this huge job and the person she'd accused of sleeping with owns this huge company. Anna was very prepared, and I could tell, knowing her, that this was something she had genuinely discussed with somebody very close to her, that this somebody was also very upset and had thought it through and addressed it, and that would have been David. Anna did it in a very dignified way, saying people still think this is the way women get ahead. Anna rarely ever held these kinds of meetings. It was one of very few such performances, and it was not a very English thing to do. Anna stood on stilettos throughout her remarks, which lasted less than 20 minutes, in a meeting room on the 12th floor, where advertising and promotion was located. After finishing, she took no questions and told her people to go back to work and move forward. If anyone applauded, no one can recall. It wasn't like everybody was shocked, says a former executive. While unusual, it was probably a smart thing for Anna to do. Her comments didn't sound like Bill Clinton's, "I didn't sleep with that woman, Miss Lewinsky." Afterward, staffers gathered in small groups to talk about the shocking events. I, for one, thought she was telling the truth, and I always thought it was handy for people at Vogue to believe that she had a thing with Cy because they didn't want to see Anna validated, says the former executive. Newhouse eventually and genially commented to Smith that he was flattered by all the gossip but declared that he was very much in love with my wife and my wife's dog, and stated firmly that there was no truth to what Smith had printed. What a weird thing to say. I'm very much in love with my wife and my wife's dog. Is it not y'all's dog? What are you talking about? I mean, it's just so random. This is what I think. Maybe Anna really didn't have any kind of relationship with him. Maybe Cy just loved the game of having this cutesy little flirt around who turned him on. I mean, I don't know. Maybe that really was enough for him. Is it possible that Grace Marabella said to her friend Liz Smith, "Hey, I think they're probably having an affair. Otherwise, why? Why in the world would they just give everything to Anna unless Cy, who continues to be the one who apparently was pressing for Anna to be there, unless Cy had something going on with Anna?" It's just so vastly unprofessional. Grace maybe isn't the one who started the rumor, but it would make sense. Liz was her friend. She was the one who had been really wounded by this unprofessional ousting. And I wouldn't blame her if she did come up with a rumor like that. And I think there's enough that had happened to her that would validate that concern. But who knows? I don't know who said the rumor. I don't know if it's true, but it isn't hard to imagine it's true. Around the same time as the Liz item ran, Newsday did a major story about Anna's takeover at Vogue and quoted an unusual fashion veteran who also asserted, "Cy's in love with her. He loves the way she looks. He loves the way she flirts." Despite Anna's sincere and forceful denial, talk of a cozy relationship between Anna and Newhouse continued. There were long-time and long-standing rumors that Anna and Cy were romantically involved, and it was never anything but smoke, says fashion writer Michael Gross. He said it was never the kind of gossipy story the Times would ever have chased, and pointed out that people in the fashion world are vicious and envious bitches, male and female. Anna's rise caused a lot of envy and bitchiness. All you had to do was see Cy Newhouse and Anna Wintour in a room together to realize that Cy was very pleased to have Anna around him. Now, can you extrapolate sex from that? Well, if you're a fashion editor sitting in your 300th fashion show, subsisting on cigarettes, coffee, and champagne in the 19th row, looking down on Anna Wintour in the front row, sure, one could come up with that. But there was never enough there that I even chased it. Anna was already with David. She was breeding. Brothers don't usually go off and have affairs. Down the road, he'd be proved wrong about that latter, though the man in question wasn't Cy Newhouse. Laurie Shetker, who had come over to Vogue as style editor with Anna, also remembers her as being highly disturbed and upset about the Liz Smith item. "I don't think Anna's speech was a case of thou doth protest too much," she maintains, "but she definitely has a way with men. They become enamored of her. She's a striking woman, and she has that mysterious allure, and her charms get turned on for men. But I didn't think, personally, that the rumor was true. How pathetic that people couldn't acknowledge she was at Vogue because she deserved to be there, and not because she slept with Cy Newhouse. Men can be carried a long way on the enamored quality of a woman like Anna. It doesn't have to be physical." I feel like Lori's need to be really loyal to Anna is impeding her from seeing the facts. She says how pathetic she couldn't acknowledge that she was at Vogue because she deserved to be there and not because she slept with Cy Newhouse. But it's like, forgive us for not being able to see this bright rainbow of a person who you call Anna Wintour. The rest of us are looking at 2 magazines she ran into the ground in the span of 3 years. That's why we're having a hard time acknowledging her enormous skill set. Because where were these skills? Where was this ability? Where was this amazing editor-in-chief behavior when she plowed 2 magazines into the ground? I mean, I don't understand what you're talking about, Lori. For Anna, her appointment seemed almost inauspicious. If there was a celebration of her coronation, no one was aware of it. So much venom was being spewed, so much anger and angst abounded. The Liz Smith story was like pouring gasoline on glowing embers. Some 14 years later, having been involved in a real, well-documented and highly publicized extramarital affair that destroyed her marriage, Anna was still oddly vexed about that old and yellowed gossip item. At a reception of a 2002 Matrix Award for Magazine sponsored by New York Women in Communications, she brought up the gossip that most everyone had forgotten. The latest scandal involving her and wealthy Texan Shelby Bryan being much more current and scrumptious. While the mood at the award luncheon was described as upbeat and gracious, Anna took a defensive tone in her acceptance speech. She recalled for the audience, including Walter Cronkite, who was on the dais, that on her first day as editor-in-chief of Vogue, a nationally syndicated gossip writer said that an alleged affair with my boss had gotten me the job. Anna emphasized that she believed none of this would have happened if I had been a man. A surprised and ironic speaker at the affair after Anna accepted her award and vented was an iconic figure who over the years had been embroiled in extramarital affairs, William Jefferson Clinton. Besides Lori Shetker, Anna brought with her to Vogue a team that included Andre Leon Talley, Gabe Doppold, who had bonded closely with Anna, Charles Gandy, Derek Unglis, Vogue's new art director, who, along with Anna, was responsible for some of the controversial changes at HG, and a couple of other creative talents. Among those who left were Jade Hobson, who went to Revlon for a time. But the other fashion creative director, Polly Mellon, stayed on. Managing editor Lorraine Davis left, but stayed within the Condé Nast organization. Features editor Amy Gross accepted a position at HG. Associate editor Kathleen Madden also resigned, but stayed at Condé Nast. The 2-person living department was killed off, and Anna's once close friend and colleague, Paul Sinclair, who'd been a fashion editor at Vogue, where he was also a close associate of Marabella's, went to HG. In all, some 30 staffers either were pink-slipped or turned in their resignation within a month or 2 of Anna's ascension. I find it highly interesting that Paul Sinclair left when Anna got there, because you'll recall she had asked him to come to London with her when she moved that way. And he refused. He also was not able to make it to her wedding, so she was just like, cut you out. You didn't come to my wedding, and now you don't think that I'm worthy of you traveling across the Atlantic to work with me? And so they kind of had a bit of a catty falling out. So it's interesting that now that they find themselves in the same place again, he wasn't looking to rekindle any friendship. With Anna gone from HG, new editor Nancy Novograd added the old name House and Garden in small letters under the HG initials in hopes of winning back subscribers who had jumped the garden fence when Anna was in residence. The magazine didn't have long to live, though, in its latest incarnation. In 1993, Cy Newhouse killed off the more than 9 decades-old monthly because its comeback wasn't fast enough. That same year, he bought its rival, Architectural Digest. Anna's shoddy renovation of HG apparently couldn't be repaired. The biggest surprise addition to Anna's team was one of the giants of British Vogue who had fled from Anna's flogging, Grace Coddington. She had been working for Calvin Klein in New York for about 18 months when Anna came into power. Coddington missed the fashion magazine world, and she felt, after working in New York, that she had a better understanding of the American woman and her fashion needs. She telephoned Anna and said, "I'd like to come back." And Anna responded, "I'm starting on Monday. Why don't you start with me?" Anna gave her the title of fashion director and put her high on the masthead. There was talk within the industry that Coddington took a substantial salary cut and ate lots of crow to come back and work for Anna again. Anna's very mercurial, notes Schechter, regarding Anna's decision to hire Coddington. She's a lot like fashion. Short skirts this season, long skirts next. She can be a bit like that with people, too. Even when she was pursuing Andre Leon Talley when he was a freelancer, she used to say to me, I think his work is so over the top, don't you? That's the way she is. It didn't surprise me that Grace went back. Working for a fashion designer like Calvin Klein is a very singular point of view, and it doesn't allow the depth of a range that working at a fashion magazine does, working with a lot of different designers' clothes and points of view rather than just one. Anna, who despised the Brit mentality that ran Vogue in London, now did a complete 180 and acknowledged that when she took over the American Vogue, I took the British approach with me because it seemed what was needed was some sort of combination of the two. Anna's immediate goal for Vogue was to put a happier face on things, says Schechter, models smiling and looking exuberant. Even Anna's first cover was a big departure because it wasn't just a beautiful face, it was a smiling, beautiful face. That cover, dated November 1988, was far different from anything Grace Marabella or Diana Vreeland or any of the others before Anna had ever dreamed or had nightmares about. It showed a pouty-lipped 19-year-old Israeli model named Michaela Berku, with mussed hair, wearing tight, faded $50 jeans. Jeans, of all things, on the cover of Glamorous Vogue, the old-line fashionistas gasped, and sporting a $10,000 Christian LaCroix t-shirt, designed with a bejeweled pattern in the shape of a cross. I wanted the cover to show gorgeous real girls looking the way they looked out on the street rather than the plastic kind of retouched look that had been the face of Vogue for such a long time, declared Anna. I wanted to bring new photographers and just liven the whole thing up a bit. Critics were astonished at what the new arbiter of American fashion had done with her first issue. As the New York Times pointed out, it may well be the first time blue jeans have appeared on a Vogue cover, without a belt, and with the model's tummy showing no less. Weird, was the way a Neiman Marcus executive described the cover. Anna's view of mixing jeans with couture was to convey to the readers that a woman can make an outfit her own by how she puts it together. She recalled the issue transitional, and pointed out that Vogue girls have a kind of don't-touch-me look. I think we have a freer attitude toward fashion. When we look at the couture this time, we try to look at it in a more accessible way. Besides the startling cover, the models inside had a more informal look. It was what Cy and Alex had been demanding of Marabella but never got. It was Elle. Vogue called the look hot but not haughty. As Schechter notes, the Vogue under Anna didn't look or feel like the Vogue under Grace. Anna obviously had a different approach. Even the content that Grace railed against for whatever reason when Anna was creative director, all of it was very palatable commercially. Anna's smart. She's not going to do something that's going to put her outside the corporate popularity. Much later, Marabella felt certain she would never have been fired if she had only followed Newhouse's wishes and made Vogue look just a little bit more like Elle. Anna had followed Newhouse's mandate to the letter, nudging Vogue over, closer to the look and feel of Elle. One of her first acts after unseating Marabella was to lure to Vogue a glamorous, high-ranking Elle editor who had the Elle spirit of being fun and mixing things up. She was an important addition to the staff in those early days. Let's chat about that cover. I always see it referenced as some kind of ugly departure. That cover was published the year I was born, so I never knew Vogue in any other iteration than the iteration that it is currently in, which mixes high and low all the time. So when I look at that cover, I'm not offended by it. It doesn't look like something that's so crazy because I'm so used to seeing, say, like in this case, the $50 jeans and the super expensive t-shirt. At the same time, it does surprise me that she would want to take the magazine and make it sort of so populist when I think that the whole point of Vogue was to make it seem like something that you couldn't quite reach but you wanted to. Sort of like influencers do, where their lives are so perfect and they're so perfect and they're so put together, and you get this sense and this feeling that this is a reality, I just have to reach for it. I think her desire to make Vogue something that already felt accessible is an interesting take, and because it does veer away from the way they were already trying to do things. Like they're trying to make you want something you didn't know you needed, whereas she's letting you know you already have it and you've already arrived. I think that's a tantalizing concept for a minute, but I think in the long run, if you look at the psychology of people, we want something to sort of attain. We want a goal that's, we kind of like the carrot at the end of the stick. We don't want to feel like we've arrived. Well, that's why when you finally get the dream job, you finally get the car, you finally get into the school, you get the job, you get the marriage, you get all the things that you think you wanted. And sometimes, and even the best thing, like the best vacation you ever had, the nicest car you ever drove, the best job you could have had, all in the end fall a little flat because our heart's constantly yearning for something that's actually not here and available to us in this realm. But the psychology of human beings is that we want something we can't have. So if you give people a magazine that already says, you have this already, we're going to maybe show you how to do it, but you already have it. I wonder if you aren't cutting the legs out from underneath you as far as getting people to keep coming back. I'm not in the magazine business, what do I know? But I'm just wondering about the psychology of deciding to make the magazine so accessible. Anna Wintour has said many times in this book, she's quoted as saying that she doesn't really stop to think very much about the end results of a thing or consider the ins and outs, or, she's not here to overanalyze anything. That's it's super boring. Like, move on, let's keep going, let's pick up the pace here. So it does make you wonder, did she even consider if what she was doing had legs to keep the magazine going? But then again, she was there for over 35 years, Was it? It was a long, long, long time that she was at Vogue. So what do I know? Obviously, she had figured out some kind of winning formula. Now, this next chapter is entitled Madonna, Di, and Tina. Madonna and Di, you can figure out who that is. Tina refers to Tina Brown, the other female editor over at Vanity Fair. She's also British. And there is a real competition between Anna and Tina. This is a really interesting chapter, but one of the features that I think is really interesting is the fact that we're going to discuss the relationship between Anna and Alex Lieberman now. You would think, after all he had done for her, that she would owe him every credit at every opportunity. She'd be going out of her way for him. Hardly. Now that she has everything she wants, who is he even? Gross, get out of the way. Yuck. It's just shocking because they had such a close relationship for so long that out of common courtesy, you'd think that she would at least pay him some mind now that she's at the top job, knowing that he literally paved the way. But she can't be bothered. It's just shocking that you could treat people like this. Anyway, let's dive right into this chapter. It says, Anna's first full year at the top of Vogue was not a pleasant time for the fashion industry. A deep recession had taken hold. The US dollar had fallen like a rock by as much as 50% against the British pound. Everyone from the rag trade to couture was feeling the pinch. As a result, Anna and other power brokers in the US fashion scene went so far as to ignore Fashion Week in London in spring 1989. Everyone was in the doldrums. Anna, meanwhile, devoted as much as 12 hours a day to performing cosmetic surgery on what she and Newhouse perceived as the wrinkly face of Vogue. Tightening it here, nipping it there, tucking it in everywhere. Always working toward making it look younger, getting it closer to that kicky Elle look that had intrigued Newhouse so much when he canned Grace Marabella because she didn't get it. What Anna didn't do was a complete makeover as she had done at HG. She'd learned her lesson about proceeding with extreme surgery without a real plan or a true feel for the marketplace. Those first year Vogue covers under Anna ranged from a young model in a tank top sporting a hat costing less than $100 to a formal photograph taken by the famous Irving Penn. It was all part of her loosening up process, without going off the chart. That included putting hot young celebrities on the cover. And none was hotter, sexier, or more erotic at the time than a singer and entertainer known as Madonna. Andre Leon Talley went forth to Los Angeles to check her out for Anna, met with her, was psyched, and thus the May 1989 issue of Vogue had the Material Girl on its cover, with a 10-page spread of her house inside, HG-like. We put Madonna on the cover, Anna intoned, because we want to show the range where fashion comes from. In fact, Anna actually put Madonna on the cover for S&S, Sales and Sigh, asserts a well-placed Vogue source. Madonna in those days would have sold a roll of toilet paper if she was on the packaging. Anna was all about celebrity. Putting a super celebrity on the cover sold big time. And Sigh was walking on air. She was doing what Grace didn't do, and what Sigh wanted. The New York Times, though, noted that Madonna was hardly the elegant, carefully coiffed woman of whom Vogue was enamored in the past. But Anna's youth orientation didn't show an upward spike in newsstand sales, which represented some 65% of Vogue circulation. That number remained much the same as when Marabella was running the show. However, advertising pages increased somewhat by about 47 pages compared to Marabella's final year. As the Times observed, the jury is still out on how effective Mrs. Wintour is doing. Meanwhile, Elle was right on Vogue's tail, having replaced Harper's Bazaar in both circulation and advertising. Some in the industry had begun looking at Anna's Baby as a Me Too magazine, meaning Anna was copying the Elle look and feel, which, to a great extent, she was. Aware of the criticism, she declared that Vogue had the responsibility to report which way fashion is going. She added, "It is an attitude, not an age. The magazine is younger looking because it's more contemporary, but age is not the issue. We have to tread a narrow path, be on the cutting edge, or lose the buzz." What a load. What a stupid thing to say. Anybody with 2 brain cells can figure out that she's just dissembling. If you have a magazine that is aimed at a certain population, if you're trying to be elegant and coiffed and staid and beautiful and solid, you don't need to change the look of the magazine so that it feels more contemporary and the fashions are younger and the models and the whole focus is towards something more kicky and trendy. That is such a misnomer to say, well, this look is contemporary. We're not copying Elle. You know, Elle looks the way Elle looks because it's a contemporary magazine, and we are making our magazine look more contemporary. So that's why we look similar. We're just following the fashion trends. And we're just, you got to keep up with fashion. So Vogue was like what? Some kind of little homespun magazine that knew nothing about fashion back in the day, and now you're keeping up with it? I mean, Vogue was always keeping up with the fashion, but in a different lane. They weren't doing this high-low thing all the time that Anna so loved. And, if she wants to make a different magazine, you got to make a different magazine. But, then say that. Instead of acting like, oh, no, it's just that this is the look these days. But we're still, pretty much doing the same thing. This is just a look. We're not copying anybody. The hell you aren't. Look, the magazines look exactly alike now. So where's the Vogue customer supposed to go? Anna had Newhouse's full backing. His plan was to raise by 10% the circulation that the magazine guarantees its advertisers, what's known in the industry as the rate base. A step like that was seen as a calculated risk and hadn't happened since the late 1970s. Anna was now moving on all fronts, from fashion to features, and seeking less and less input from the one man who had guided her to her pinnacle, Alex Lieberman. She essentially demanded that her mentor keep his nose out of what she was doing. Anna told Cy that she didn't want Alex meddling, that she wanted total control over what went into each issue, a Vogue insider maintains. When the word got around that Anna was dissing Alex, she claimed it was all nasty gossip. Rubbish. But Alex fell out of the loop that he had controlled forever. The man who had helped her get to Vogue in the first place came to the realization that he was no longer of any use to her. He had done for Anna what she required, and now she felt it was time to break the cord, notes the insider. Alex complained, and Cy finally had to put Anna on notice to keep Alex involved. Later, Anna acknowledged that she probably forgot how much Lieberman had been involved before, which is difficult to imagine since she was at his side from the moment she first came to Vogue as creative director and relied on him to consult on and approve her pages when she was at British Vogue. These blatant lies are just such an insult. I didn't even really think about how he was really involved before. So I wasn't kicking him out or anything. I just kind of forgot. Oh, you forgot, did you? Do you need to go into memory care? What are you talking about you forgot? I guess, said Anna later, I was trying too hard to prove that I was not going to be like Grace Marabella. No, you were trying to get rid of the person who you just didn't need anymore. It's all about you. So you don't need Alex anymore because Alex was your way up. But now that you're at the top, what do you need this hangers on for? And for Anna, where it was just always about my way or the highway, she couldn't wait to kick him to the side of the road. She hated having to report to him, having to use his power in order to gain her own. But now that she's got the power, what is she going to keep him around for? This has nothing to do with, I was just trying to prove I wasn't Grace. No, you're trying to prove that you are top dog. She said that when she took over from Marabella, she had meetings with Lieberman, who appeared concerned about his future role. He kept asking her, well, what will it be like? And how will we get along? I was probably too pushy, and all the people who had been with me at HG were used to reporting to me. But Alex and I talked, and gradually things got worked out. Her complete and total delusion as to what his role was to be, and acting like she didn't need to report to him, and acting like, well, it was just hard because I just came from HG, and everybody was reporting to me, and so that was the dynamic I was used to. Why are you acting like you've never even known this guy, that you've never even known what his role was in your life? Why are you acting now like, it's so weird that he kind of wanted to be involved a lot? That was kind of a different dynamic for me. Did you just forget the last 7 years of your life? Under orders from Newhouse, Anna brought Lieberman back in the ballgame. somewhat, by running layouts by him and by showing him potential covers, but doing what she wanted to do anyway. She placated him, and he felt relieved that he wasn't being discarded. He saw Anna as bold and audacious in how she handled the magazine and its personnel. Well, he thought Diana Vreeland, when she took over Vogue, was daring in an artificial way, that she was all flamboyance. Anna, he determined, if he hadn't long ago, was closer to pure femininity, and felt her great genius in feminine seduction. Maybe this is what it takes to make Vogue exciting. I may have made Vogue handsome, but I don't think I made its fashion pages exciting. Besides Elle, a new magazine had joined the Fashion Follies. It was called Marabella. What? Anna simmered. She thought Marabella was out of her hair forever. Now she was back. About a week after Anna was named editor, Marabella received a telephone call from Ed Costner, Anna's former editor at New York Magazine, who told her that his boss, the media baron Rupert Murdoch, wanted to have lunch with her. Marabella wondered why a publisher known mostly for his gossipy tabloids, but also 50% of Elle, wanted to meet, but she went along for the ride. No one turns down an audience with Murdoch. At a fancy French restaurant, he talked to her in detail about women's magazines, asking lots of questions, especially about what was lacking in them and which audience of women was being ignored. They parted company, with Murdoch saying the magic words, "Let me go over the figures," which meant the man had a plan. Marabella heard nothing more. Murdoch was busy that summer buying TV Guide, the Daily Racing Form, and 17. Then, when she thought that he was off to other things, he called, and they had another lunch. It went well. A few days later, she sat with one of his colleagues in a private room at another restaurant and was told she was going to be given a new magazine. She was floored when she heard it was going to be called Marabella. Murdoch's philosophy was, a magazine has to have a name, and Marabella's as good as any. As Anna was working to get her first spring 1989 issue locked up, Marabella was preparing for her first issue, which she proudly described to the media as an upscale fashion book for women who know who they are. It's for women who are more than fashion groups. It's not about bubblegum and hula hoops. A top executive of Murdoch magazine, though, was more specific about the target audience. It's aimed at the reader Vogue abandoned 10 years ago. She's interested in substance, not glitter. Once Marabella began readying to launch, Vogue would fight tooth and nail to keep anyone from even thinking of defecting. Those who did, or were known to be negotiating with the enemy, were threatened with blacklisting from Vogue. That went for models, photographers, writers, and editors. It became nasty. Some key players were forced to sign contracts giving Vogue exclusivity, causing them to lose their other markets. That was an outside feud, one of many Anna would have with editors of competing fashion magazines. Within the Condé Nast organization, Anna's main competitor was seen as that other Brit, Vanity Fair, and later New Yorker editor-in-chief Tina Brown. The media loved to play up a good catfight, and magazine industry wags were constantly weaving bitchy scenarios about the two. Anna versus Tina made for hot copy. They'd become symbols of the glittery Condé Nast universe, glamorous icons presented like movie stars playing at being editors. They both ran glitzy journals in tight skirts and high heels, lived glamorous public lives, were celebrities in the gossip columns. Everything about their high-flying worlds became grist. They were the dons of Condé Nast's British mafia. The feud between Anna and Brown wasn't totally imagined. Rancor between the two dated back to their young days in London. Brown's father, George Hambley Brown, a British B-movie producer, despised Charles Wintour because the Evening Standard had panned some of his films. Charles thought Brown was a hack filmmaker, says Alex Walker. I didn't think much of him either, and my reviews reflected both of our thinking. The resentment carried over to their daughters once they were together in the same arena. Embarrassed by her lack of a formal education, Anna was envious of Brown's, who had been a proper and serious student, and graduated from Oxford's St. Anne's College. Unlike Anna, Brown had no problem with writing, and, as was said later, took to magazine editing like a Deb to a canapé. But while Brown was blonde, tiny, buxom, and 5 years younger, she was no seductive glamour puss like Anna, and that caused her to be jealous. Here were two women who could not have been more different, observes a female former Condé Nast executive who worked closely with both of them. Tina is so smart, so good at what she does, and Anna is beautiful and icy and knows how to play the game. Their relationship with Cy had many elements of a classic family structure, a classic dysfunctional family structure, with Cy as the father figure and Anna and Tina vying to be the favored daughter. Cy appreciated them each. Tina's perception was that Anna was the prettier sister, more girly girl, more popular. But Tina was brilliantly finding this magazine's niche that had never existed and was getting all that media attention, and that made Anna jealous. Both used their charms on Cy. What the two did have in common was unvarnished ambition, undistilled drive, Olympian competitiveness, and an incredible need for success, all worthy traits in the bitchy magazine world. They also had a friend in common, the London gossip columnist Nigel Dempster. In November 1989, Anna and Brown put aside their differences for a few hours and co-hosted a party for Dempster in New York to honor the publication of a book he'd written about the tragic life of billionaire playgirl Christina Onassis. The event took place in a trendy downtown cafe owned by Anna's pal, Brian McNally. The guest list consisted of some 200 so-called classic A talents and literary masters of the universe. Nice way of describing the usual suspects who show up to get free books, free food, free drinks, and a free boldface mention in Liz Smith's mostly hagiographic column. At one point during the party, both Anna and Brown showed their wicked side, laughing hysterically when Dempster, probably soused, accused one of the guests of murdering Onassis a year earlier. When Anna was editing HG and it started including celebrity coverage, Brown was livid. She couldn't believe that Newhouse would permit her to trespass on her glitzy domain since Vanity Fair was all about the idealization of celebrities. "Can you believe Cy did that?" Brown once complained to a friend. "He's humiliating my father. He knows Anna's father and my father are mortal enemies. He knows." What does that have to do with anything? What do their dads have to do with anything? They're grown adult women in their own fields. Why do they expect their boss to care about their dad's feud? I feel like that is... I'm either not getting the full context or Tina Brown needs to stop being so petty. A knowledgeable observer, however, says, "I always thought Tina used the feud between the fathers as an excuse. Tina just saw Anna as being far more beautiful and had far greater ease, and that Cy found her sexier. They were like teenagers vying for his eye." Anna's pal, Andre Leon Talley, who once worked for Brown at Vanity Fair, is said to have thought of her as tacky, 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 dowdy, 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 and accused her of wearing borrowed designer dresses. Talley reportedly presented his views to Brown in a snarky note when he left Vanity Fair at one point to work for Anna. Tacky, 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 dowdy, dowdy, dowdy. If there's one person who should not be criticizing anybody else in their appearance, it's Andre Leon Talley, but that's just my feeling. Their resentment toward each other grew more intense in the 1990s. In June 1992, Brown was named editor of America's most esteemed but money-losing weekly, The New Yorker. The move caused quite a stir in the literary and media worlds, but for Anna, Newhouse's decision to place Brown there came as welcome news. Rumors had been circulating that Brown was being considered by Newhouse as Lieberman's replacement as editorial director of all Condé Nast magazines. Anna lobbied strenuously against it, telling friends privately that she'd quit before having to report to Brown. It would have been a battle royale. By June 1997, Brown had turned the New Yorker around. Anna was nearing her 8th successful year running Vogue, and while there would never be a peace treaty between the two, things appeared copacetic. In fact, Anna had arranged for a very private lunch with one of the world's most famous women, Diana, Princess of Wales, at the Four Seasons in New York, and had graciously invited Brown to join them. Now, I'm sure many of you are familiar with this story. I was not, and I was really, really shocked by the way things turned out with Tina Brown in this story. Up until this point, I'm almost cheering for Tina Brown just because I so hate Anna, but this is really pretty low down story. Since The New Yorker, for the most part, wasn't into celebrity and fashion reportage, Anna's fears of competition from Brown had faded somewhat. But Anna's invitation to Brown was Machiavellian, mainly because of a nasty piece Brown had written for Vanity Fair in the mid-1980s before she became its editor, a piece of journalism that Di would never have forgotten. That story, which received international attention, painted the prince and princess as a highly dysfunctional couple. Called The Mouse That Roared, Brown described an emotionally unstable Di who spent hours isolated, listening to her Sony Walkman, dancing alone, and studying her press clippings, and she described Charles as pussy whipped from here to eternity. Now, we'll continue with the story, but I just want to say a real quick thing. If you have not listened to the book, The Housekeeper's Diary, about the housekeeper who worked at Highgrove during the marriage of Princess Diana and the now King Charles, I would urge you, if you need something to listen to go and listen to that. It was such an interesting read. But you know the book was banned in England. because it was scathing, but not scathing in a bitchy way. I think that's really important to note. The housekeeper is totally just telling her story, but she never takes sides. She's just telling what she saw. I thought it was a really well-written, fair book. And if you have not listened to it, I'm talking about juicy details. And unfortunately, very similar to what is being described here, as Diana is spending hours isolated, listening to her Sony Walkman and obsessing over her press clippings. So if you need something just juicy and you like royal news and you didn't know I'd done that book, I urge you to go and listen to that one. It's amazing. Back to the story. By the time of the lunch, though, Diana seemed to hold no grievance against Brown and opened up to the two editors, confiding her negative thoughts about Prince Charles as the future King of England. It was strictly a social lunch, and everything discussed was off the record. Supposedly. Cut to September 1997 and the horrible car crash that took Diana's life in Paris. Brown rushed out a special New Yorker commemorative issue. And there, as part of the package, was a blow-by-blow account of that lunch with Di, which became a journalistic bombshell. While New Yorker newsstand sales rocketed, critics like Daniel Yardley in the Washington Post lambasted Brown for breaking Di's confidentiality, calling the piece an exercise in self-display so odious as to shame everyone in journalism. Odious, schmodious. Anna was livid and complained vociferously to Newhouse and others in the media who she hoped would go after Brown for breaking the confidence. Mainly, she was upset because she'd been scooped by her arch-rival. Tina never so much as inquired whether Anna was okay with her using the entire off-the-record conversation, says a Vanity Fair editor and writer who had a ringside seat to the imbroglio. There was no courtesy call by Tina to Anna, which there usually is from one editor to another in the same organization under such circumstances. All's fair in journalism, but Anna was fit to be tied. She was the one who had arranged the lunch, and she was embarrassed, mainly because it was Tina and not she who had run with the story. But the brouhaha over the Di story paled in comparison to the controversy still to come over how Brown would use the pages of her next magazine, Talk, to go after Anna and her lover after the scandal about their extramarital affair became tabloid news. As one highly placed Condé Nast executive observes, when it involves Anna, it's a bitch-eat-bitch world. Golly, just everybody needs to calm down. But I do think it was pretty ratty of what Tina did. I mean, can you even imagine? Can you even imagine somebody dies and the first thing you do is write a story about things they told you in private? It's like, that seems really sacrilegious and evil. They can't even come, they told this stuff to you in confidence. And you're like, good, they're dead now. Now I can tell the story that I know everyone will love and it'll just make my magazine explode. Think of the sales. The woman is dead. Odious doesn't even begin to describe that kind of behavior. All right, thank you guys so much for hanging out with me. I'll see you tomorrow. Hope you have a great rest of your day. Bye.